Hi everybody, how's everyone doing? So today what we're gonna do is make some cats. What I'm gonna challenge you to do is think about perspective. Sometimes we get stuck in making the same thing over and over again. And today I wanna kind of challenge you to think about how you could make a cat in different positions, maybe different things that you associate with a cat. And then as the week goes on, if you have time, what might be fun is trying it with a different animal, like maybe a fish or a dog or any animal, or really any object. Try to imagine them in different ways that you can show the different perspectives. So the first thing I did was I just drew some simple squares on my paper. And I used a straight edge. You can use like a little pad of Post-it notes or something. You can use a ruler, or you can fold your paper, or you can just freehand draw a couple of squares or 6 squares on your paper. And the reason why is then that way we're going to just sort of push ourselves into looking at how we can make a cat in 6 different ways. So what we're gonna do is first use pencil. I'm going to go over it with black Sharpie, which is water resistant permanent marker. And then that way we can fill it in later with some watercolor. All right, so the first cat I'm going to do is just the kind of straightforward, just the head and a little bit of a neck, using simple shapes. And since I'm making this almost like a cartoon cat, I'm keeping it super simple. All right, so there I've got my first cat. If I want to make him look like his little paws are coming up, I can just make little ovals here. So the second cat I'm going to have laying down. And since he's laying down, his head is going to be down here toward the bottom of that square and kind of flat at the bottom, so it looks like his face is smushed. And what I think is sort of fun and interesting is to have part of the cat coming off of or outside of that square. So I'm going to have one of his ears dangling over. And it's as if he's got his little legs slouched down, whether he was on a windowsill or something, so that they're just sort of hanging over. And then I'm going to have a straight edge at the bottom so it shows that his little tummy is flattened. And then like I said before, I want some of it to come out of that frame. So I'll just draw the tail coming down like this. Since he's sleeping, I'll do little arcs as eyes. And I'm going to make him smiling while he sleeps. Okay? So the third one, I'm going to make him look like he's crouched, like he's about to pounce on something. And the way I'm doing this is just by making some really simple ovals on top of each other. Then I'm going to have the 2 little ovals like his paws by the sides of his face. Okay, and then if you want, you can make his little hind legs behind, or you can just leave it with a plain circle. And then of course don't forget his tail, which would be sort of coming outside of the frame of that square. And then here I'm going to give him simple dots, little upside down triangle for the nose, and then we've got another position of a cat. So I'm going to have this guy sort of peeking into my frame, and so I'm only going to be able to see a very slight part of his face. And so I'm going to make just a part of the circle in the corner. I might be able to see one ear, and because I'm zoomed in so close, I have to think about, well, there's no way I would really be able to see both eyes unless they were super close together. And so I'm just going to be able to see one eye and a little bit of his face. But then that looks like he's sort of peering into the frame. All right, for this one, I thought it'd be fun just to show his paw, and maybe he has his claws out because he's playing. And maybe we just see part of a ball of yarn. Okay. And then the last one, a very simple seated cat, just by doing a circle, coming down on both ends, almost in this triangle shape. And maybe he'd be licking his paw. We have a cat, we see her doing this all the time. This leg you would see down here, and then just a little bit of the hind legs on either side. Little ovals. Okay. So since I have basically my cats all sketched out, I can take a moment and just quickly go over with a Sharpie or some kind of permanent marker. And again, I definitely want to keep a permanent marker handy if I have watercolor, because if you use Crayola or any kind of marker like that, it will bleed. And in that case, you're going to want to do the watercolor first and then go over with the black after. All right, again, I want to exaggerate that his face is flat against the windowsill there. He's got his little legs dangling. Okay. So these are just 3 different perspectives, but there's so many other ways that you could come up with maybe the life of a cat. Maybe you'd have a fishbowl. You could always have a cat from the behind showing his tail up in the air. A cat standing up on all 4s, which I didn't include here. And I would challenge you then to think about how you could represent what you're looking at. If you're looking at a picture of a cat, or even from your memory, how you would just represent it from a different point of view. Okay. And what's so interesting too is when you show part of your picture going off the page, our brains fill in the blanks for us. Okay, and then we've got the little claw or paw that he's licking. Cats are so fastidious and really good at keeping themselves clean. Oh, and I forgot the little tail, which I almost do a backwards S and then draw another line right alongside of it. Okay. So that's basically what I would do. And then after I've got all of my lines covered over, I'm going to make sure that I've got my water and watercolors close by, and I can make some decisions about what colors I would want to use. So I know we've got a cat in the neighborhood that is orange who looks super friendly. So I think I'll start with an orange. Whew, had a hard time getting my watercolors open. All right, so I might just go in and do a quick wash of orange. I should mention, I used watercolor paper because I had some on hand. You can use whatever you want. If you don't have watercolor paper, just be careful that you don't get your colors too wet, or else that paper will buckle. You can always use markers, crayons, whatever materials you have. All right, and now what's fun is just sort of imagining all the different colors that we can come up with for a cat. Maybe this guy would be tan. What's fun about watercolor is you can really spread that paint around quickly. And maybe this cat has some little brown dots too. So I've got the base of his body is tan, and I'm going to go back and give him just some brown spots. Okay. And maybe this one down here would be a black cat. I want to make sure I don't have too much black paint on, or else it's gonna go on so thick that I won't be able to see those black outlines. So I do have some water here that makes it a lighter black, which becomes a gray. Do you see that? And I can just move that around. I'm gonna go ahead and paint over the whole thing, and I can go back after it's all dry. I would add some pink for the nose and the ears. All right, I'm gonna move some of that paint off of the face so I can see the details of the face. And then too, you'll see that it does dry a little bit lighter. All right, so for this one, maybe he'd be a light gray silvery color. So I've got, on my set here, I do have a white. So that works out. If you don't, then you can always just really use a lot of water and barely any black paint in order to get a light gray. Now, I'm noticing that this is coming in really, really wet with lots of paint, so I may even use a paper towel to blot that dry. And I'll show you how it'll pick up some of that paint and it'll come out a little bit lighter color. So I gotta be real careful, but I'm just gonna pick up some of that paint. You know what's neat too? It just added a little texture. I like that a lot. Okay, down here, I'll make this guy an orange kitty. Give him an orange kitty paw. And I want to come up with a fun color that's going to really pop against my orange and my grays here. And maybe I would do a bright blue ball of yarn. And then again, it's only going to show part of it. So I want to very carefully go along the side of my frame there. And then my eyes will finish the picture. So I'll know that that is a ball of yarn. And for this last guy, I'm going to give him a tan body. And then I can go back again. And I do like those little brown dots or spots on their face or the back. What I find too with watercolor, and you'll probably see this as you play around with watercolors, you can always go back and add more layers with watercolor. So for example, this guy is basically dry, so I can go back and add another layer of color, and you'll see that it comes in darker then. So maybe he'd have just some little orange spots going all the way down, almost like little tiger stripes. Or for this guy, and this one's still wet, but I can go back with a darker brown and just give more pronounced spots here. And then same with this guy, I might give him some little spots too. All right, that's it, pretty easy. When I'm finished, or when it's nice and dry, I can go back and just fill in the nose and the ears. But I am gonna wanna make sure that it's dry up here. I think this space I've let dry long enough. And so that should be okay. Otherwise, they will blend, so just be careful with that. But I hope that you guys have fun kind of playing around with different perspective of some different animals or different objects. Again, just draw a couple of squares. In this case, I drew 6, and then challenge myself to come up with 6 different ways to show a cat or a different perspective. All right, have fun. See you soon. Bye-bye.